Welcome back to Brokers of Secrets. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about something that's so important, but most people never considered. In order to understand how to build and experience exponentially more wealth, more success, you need to understand how to lose it all. How people lose it all, right? Let's break that pattern down. See, a lot of people think, oh, if you grew up with money, you're second generation or third generation, you should be pretty happy. You should be well taken care of. You're made, right? You got a trust fund, whatever. But the truth is, it's not like that. 70% of the wealth is gone by the second generation, and 90% is gone by third gen. Multi-generational wealth is not as easy to maintain as people think. Now, why is that important for all of us to understand? First off, if you don't understand how it's lost, you can't protect it. And if you can't protect it, it could be gone at any time. It triggers fear, it triggers anxiety, and fear and anxiety immobilizes entrepreneurs and leaders. It causes people to not make decisions that move forward to create greater success. Now, believe it or not, the last 5%, the last 10% of success is actually the most important part. But most people don't have it because it is subconscious. It's all in the subconscious, in the unconscious. Let me explain this. You can typically brute force your way from 0 to 90%, even 95%. You can work really hard, spend endless hours. You can work really hard, you can network really hard, you can save money, you can invest money, you can do all the things that people do, right? Get yourself to 90, 95%. Now, again, this is not investment or financial advice of any kind. Keep in mind, most people can consciously, with hard work, brute force, whatever you call it, to get to that 90, 95%, but they cannot get to 100% without working on their subconscious. It's impossible. And it's that same 5-10% that is missing that causes them to lose their wealth. And if not in this generation, next generation. If not that generation, the next generation. Because those unconscious patterns, without you correcting it, will get passed on. Because children are like a sponge. They will learn it in their first 7 years. Your unconscious patterns, your problems. So you may know how to work really hard now, but by the time next gen or the third gen comes around, your grandkids, or frankly, it may not even need to go that far. First-time entrepreneurs can lose it all themselves because they've never learned how their subconscious or unconscious work. Now, that should be clear enough indicator that we must understand every individual on this planet who's interested in creating exponential wealth and success or impact need to understand that these last 5-10% is crucial. That also leads me to the point. This coming year and decade and beyond, Upgrade's focus is to help those who can get themselves from 0 to 90%. If you don't know how to work hard, if you have not learned how to create something of value, at least 0 to that 90%, we're not necessarily for you. Yes, we have some programs that we built that's not the core trainings, the core services that we offer that can help people. But the truth is, it takes a lot of effort for us. It takes a lot of effort for us to teach someone who doesn't know how to work hard to change their mind. They're not going to even work hard on their mind, right? But for those of you who actually have gotten yourself to 90, 95%, maybe you've sold a couple of businesses that you're like, oh man, if I had just a little bit more resources, made some slightly different decisions, corrected this thing, iterated once more, I could have made it 30x, 50x, 100x. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to be serving in terms of the people. People who already know how to work hard, who've already had some success. We can help you take it from 90 to 100% or 95 to 100%. Now, you may say, what does that mean? Is it just like a 5-10% improvement? No, it's exponential. The last 5 to 10% is where the magic is. It reveals who you really are. This is where your potential lies. This is where first generation wealth, if you grew up without very much, or you grew up normal, middle class, whatever, and you want to get to exponential, massive success, this last 5 to 10% is going to make or break you. What we do at Upgrade is to upgrade your subconscious, that entire aspect of you that you don't know about, that you don't have control over necessarily, that you haven't mastered. We will help you go from 90 or 95 to 100. Now, that's important to understand, and I'm going to tell you the details in this episode as well. It's also important to understand that if you have that kind of assurance that you can actually reach it and keep it, what happens is you will be able to pass on that same knowledge to your children. Here's why wealth is gone by second gen by 70% and 90% by third gen. Is because they never knew how to go from 0 to 90 and then 90 to 100, right? First off, they didn't have to work hard to earn the first 90%. Then the parents haven't mastered the last 5-10%. So they're going to pass on the same problematic patterns into their children. So now the children's got the problematic patterns. On top of it, they don't know how to work hard. This is really simple to understand why second gen and third gen don't have it. And their biggest fear is to literally just, can I just please keep the money? Can I just keep the wealth? Can I just keep it together and not lose it? And they may even have this fear of, I just don't want to lose it. I'm just so scared of losing it, right? Their biggest and most important objective in their mind is protecting their wealth, because they don't have the skills to make it from 0 to 90, and they don't have the 90 to 100, the understanding, the mastery of their subconscious patterns to actually protect it. Now, why is this important enough for Upgrade to focus on this? Because previously we have served people from all walks of life, and we love that. We love being able to help people. That being said, if someone doesn't know how to work hard, we have observed over the last 10 years, it's exponentially more effort on our side to help them. In fact, they should be the ones that paid the most for us to help them. But unfortunately, that's not feasible economically, right? Those who don't have the 0 to 90, they needed to be the ones that pay the most. But unfortunately, the price we charge is actually the least. So moving into the new year, into 2026 and beyond, what we have done is we have created a category, and it already exists right now. It's called Upgrade Self. We teach them how to upgrade themselves from 0 to 90. They'll learn how to work hard, yet less effort, less resistance. It's easier for them to be consistently hardworking and build the success. And that's good. It's mostly through a cohort style learning and or self-learning. It's passive programming, as well as they need to actively study. It requires them to practice what we teach them. It's very much built for that group. My focus is not there. I'm going to be very transparent. My focus and our team's focus is on the folks that have gotten to 80 or 90 or 95%. That is where the magic is. When it comes to upgrade others, we have built a system to help people become more persuasive, influential. That's great. But when it comes to upgrade world, we are focused on helping people who literally have created all the success, but now they need the last 5-10% to go exponential. So let me give you some skills in this episode on, because now you understand, okay, if someone don't know how to work hard and they don't have the unconscious patterns to protect and keep the wealth, of course they're going to lose it. But even those who know how to work hard, if they don't have the last 5-10%, they're going to have a hard time keeping it, and they're going to have a hard time growing to the level that they want, even if they believe in themselves wholeheartedly. It's not about beliefs. It's about the unconscious patterns that they need to work on. See, you can believe all you want that the sun won't come up, but the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Yeah, that seems like a positive thing, right? But what about the negative things? What about the negative patterns someone has? It doesn't matter what you believe. It's not about belief. It will show up if the pattern remains, and they're highly unconscious. So let me give you some ways for you to find these patterns and begin to remove them. Yeah. Now, this is not a how episode per se. This is for you to understand what the steps are. What is it? What's causing this problem, and why you need to pay attention to it. And trust me, if you were to understand this, I think you're going to see life in a whole new perspective. So first off, I'm going to walk you through a pattern that if you were to follow, you would find that your life would change. And then through these patterns, I'm going to break down, this is what happens. This is what happens. This is why this happens. All that, yeah? So in Upgrade, if you're a current student, you'll see that we teach Design Your Life. That's one of the first things we teach. And if you're not, you probably heard me say this in our episodes. Design your life. Well, most people will not buy a house that's not been designed, that's not gone through. I would say 99.9% of the people wouldn't buy a house if you don't have a blueprint, a design, architectural plan, engineering plan, right? I think that sounds very reasonable, because who knows what kind of danger it poses if it's not been properly designed, architect, and engineered, right? But then how is it okay for most people to not architect a plan, a design for their mind, a blueprint for their life? Most people are like, it's okay for me to just go and do life and not have any design, right? That's one of the first problems that most hardworking entrepreneurs, leaders, successful business owners, and investors, they don't have a design of what they want of their life. So they go about life following pure unconscious patterns, instincts. They follow reactive signals that come from them feeling whatever they feel because of whatever that's happening to them. And it's just a bunch of random reactive responses. Now, they may be disciplined and hardworking so they can overcome it. But the problem is, again, if they could get to 100% by hard work, they would have gotten there. If they could have had that exit that they wanted sooner, bigger, if they could have had the successful relationships that they wanted, instead it ended in divorce, if they could have had what they wanted in the first place by hard work, they would have done it. But hard work can only get you so far. The physical can only get you so far. I mean, think about it. It's like a computer. You can put together the most powerful hardware, but if you put let's say, first-gen Windows, or even before, right? Imagine if you put MS-DOS or, first-gen, like one of the first-gen operating systems, like Microsoft Windows 3.1 or 95. Think about how buggy your system would be. Even though you could put together a $20,000 or, heck, $1 million machine, doesn't matter. If you put the wrong software in there, you can work it really hard, but it will still produce problem. The human mind is very similar. If your software has problems, you will have problems. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about why design matters. Most people are really good at focusing on what they don't want. In fact, the entire entrepreneurial culture out there is about finding problems to solve. Nothing wrong with that, unless you spend all your time focusing on only the negative effects of problems. Then what you get is what? Negative states, anxiety, pressure, stress. You can ask any entrepreneur who's actually doing anything of value and of, success, a certain level of success, they are going to feel some stress. They can do all the biohacking, all of the cold plunges they want, all of the saunas they want. They still feel the mental stress, pressure. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying most people their only strategy is working harder. that doesn't solve the problem. At least not the last 5 to 10%, where it's actually exponential. Because the last 5 to 10% could be 100x, 1,000x, could be 1,000,000x, right? With understanding that you need to design your life away from your default patterns, you begin to see, oh, I haven't considered this. I haven't considered that. I haven't considered this. By understanding design, you shift what your mind focuses on. Because remember, what your mind focuses on and what you saturate your mind with becomes your reality. Because your mind is like a projector and a laptop. If you don't change what's in the laptop, you're not going to project what you want. But if you don't design, how are you going to give it what you want, right? So you need to have an inventory of what you want more than the inventory of what you don't want. I know this sounds simple, but many of you don't do this enough. You only go and design what you want when problems get bad enough, but then you don't actually have the mental capacity or the room, the space, the peacefulness in your mind to shift into that design mode. So simply put, you need to design what you want. And my recommendation is start with 100 things you want and 100 experiences you want. It's not to train your mind to be materialistic. Things are just there because it's very measurable. Experiences, very measurable. So we want you to design the things you want and train your mind to go towards what you design. And what you don't want no longer becomes the focus. This alone should be a game changer inside of that 5 to 10%. This alone will alter your mind's focus, therefore what you saturate your mind with, therefore your creation in the physical. Now, the only person that can prove that this works is you. You've got nothing to lose. Design what you want. Design things and experiences you want. Design the success you want. Design it with clarity. And what does that mean? It means fill in the pixels. Don't design it like, oh, I want to be successful. That doesn't work. Be really specific. Because the more specific you have that you design with mentally, the easier it is for your subconscious mind to give your physical body, your communication, your behavior, very precise, calibrated response so you can actually begin to initiate the completion of the last 5-10%. You can actually begin to do things without wasting effort. Because look, the more precise, the less waste. Simple, right? The reason you've worked really hard, 0 to 90, is because you didn't have precision, right? If you just know what you know now, you could have done what 0 to 90 in less time, right? Because you didn't know. But how do you know something? One is trial and error, which again brings us back to the hard work aspect of the talk. But the other way is learning from people who have done it, but also people who, more importantly, people who have done it without the trauma of the problem, or at least have resolved them. Yeah. See, let me point out something. A lot of us will listen to someone who's very successful as a mentor or, a role model, whatever it is. But you don't just download their successes. You're downloading also how they fear, how they become angry, how they become passionate, how they create problems. So people download the whole suite of problems along with the skills and strategies. They never purify those models. They never aggregate those models and compare patterns and remove and strip away the things that actually don't work. Well, but let me say this. If you don't design what you want, how would you know what to strip away and what to keep, right? So design. Start there, and let's talk about the next step. The next step in our upgrade protocol is actually resolution, meaning we remove the things that are blocking you. Now, this is heavy unconscious work. A lot of people have trauma. That's part of life. But those traumas, and on top of failure, on top of whatever feedback they've gotten that might have caused them to feel hurt, guilt, anger, or even depressed, all of the feelings and fear, that's a huge one for entrepreneurs and business owners and investors, right? If you don't remove them, you can design all you want. Your mind's going to block you. Your mind's like, well, remember last time you did that? That created a series of problems. You lost money, you lost relationship. Those movies and stories will get replayed the moment you trigger it with a new goal. Not to mention, imagine this. Inside your mind, there's a folder. And this is a metaphor. Imagine there's a folder called goals. You have all these goals that you've set. But guess what? Your goals, did you hit all of them? You didn't. No one does, right? So what's the percentage of goals that you actually hit? What's the number that comes to mind? Now, most of the time is 50% or less. For a lot of people we've asked, right? Some people are outliers and they have slightly more than 50%. But most people don't hit their goals all the time, right? They have a less than 50% chance. Well, guess what? If you do the math on it, this folder of goals has a less than 50% success rate. So if you have a portfolio with less than 50% success, you bring it to the bank, what's the bank going to say? The bank is going to say, well, I'm sorry, your portfolio has less than 50% success rate. I'm not going to lend you money. The same thing happens with your subconscious. If your subconscious mind looks at your goals, and it's like, oh, inside of this folder of all your goals, you've only hit 20%, 30%. I'm not going to put all my energy into helping you achieve this next goal that's supposed to change your life. I'm not going to help you achieve that last 5, 10, 20%, whatever it is that you'll go exponential, because guess what? It's taken us so much energy already to get here, and look at all the percentage data that you have in this folder. You only had a 25 or 30% success rate. That's how your unconscious mind is evaluating how much energy, dedication, focus that it'll put into helping you solve your problem or achieve your goals. Here's the thing. That is also why most people just choose to work hard to compensate for what their unconscious mind is not willing to cooperate for. Because your unconscious mind is fighting you and you have to fight it back. That's why people always say, oh, I got to fight. I got to grind. I got to hustle. I got to do what it is to achieve it. That is because they're having an internal battle. You can pay attention. Entrepreneurs that tell you I'm just hustling, grinding, there's an internal battle going on. Whether they tell you or not, there is an internal battle going on. They're using hard work to compensate for the battles that they're not winning inside their mind. And the greatest battles are always fought between the walls of your brain, in your mind, right? Listen, resolving those things are crucial, because if you don't resolve it, the conflict internally is going to show up in the physical, because our mind has a funny way of expressing, hey, guess what? You didn't solve this problem. Let me show it to you in the physical. So you have to solve it regardless. So when it comes to losing, failing, it's really an internal battle more than an external thing. And if you don't solve it internally, you're going to have problems externally. And then, how are you going to even have a chance or the opportunity, the time, the resources to reach from 90 to 100? You won't. You'd be too distracted by the internal battles. So here in step 2, we remove the resistance, the problems blocking you from going from 90 to 100 or 95 to 100. And in design, right, step 1, we design what the 100% looks like. So now there's incentives to go from 90 to 100. Because most of you don't even know what that looks like. You just look back, you're like, I could have done more. I could have had more success, exponentially more if I just made that decision different. Well, first off, you didn't even incentivize your mind to want to do that. So that's why design and by the way, in design, we also teach our clients how they can structure a 90 to 100 year plan, a century, right? The greatest problem we have in the West is thinking quarterly. We need to think in 100-year terms, because if you do, your mind can maneuver. Your mind is smart enough to maneuver, especially if you remove the blockages. you can maneuver to 100%. You can maneuver to your greatest goals of all time, your century goals, your multi-century goals. You can do it sooner because you give your mind room to think. But if you're like, it's quarterly, you're thinking constantly in the short term. No one who thinks in the short term creates anything great. They're always going to be limited, right? And so I would say quarterly thinking is what keeps middle class, unfortunately. And then if you go down in the financial, I mean, you can call it financial food chain, whatever you call it, right? Maybe that's not politically correct, but you get what I mean. If you go into the lower income class, they're thinking weekly, monthly at the most, right? But sometimes just daily. Oh, they need bills paid. The longer term you think, the greater your wealth can be. And especially if you do it by design and removal of the blockages. Now, the next two steps are also very, very, very important. Third step is rumination. It's a meditative state, alter state. You use that state to think. Now, I know it sounds simple, but thinking is one of the most important work that most people don't do. But I don't mean just thinking in a conscious, fully aware, fully awake state. I'm talking about thinking when you're in an alter state. That is a secret most people don't know and don't talk about. If you can think inside of an alter state, you can reach way beyond. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this. This is an entire different topic that deserves its own episode. We can talk more about that. But remember, the mind is a quantum supercomputer. It is not limited by space and time. So if you can get into an alter state, you can unlock those walls. Then in the final step, you make a full decision. Most people make a 90% decision, if that, right? If you want to get to 100% success, you got to make a 100% full decision. And we also have we can do an entire episode on that. But remember this, you don't make exponentially more success happen. Your subconscious mind does. If you can get yourself from 0 to 90, that's wonderful news. But again, most people don't go from 90 to 100 because their subconscious mind is refusing to cooperate. And you don't entice it enough. You're trying to coerce your mind into giving you exponentially more, but your mind's like, why? We're comfortable, we're fine. The input and output, it just doesn't justify. Your mind's like, I don't get anything out of this. Like, I'm fine. I don't want to work harder just for what? To avoid pain? We're far enough from pain. It's fine. No, if you don't design, if you don't resolve those problems, and if you don't actually make a full decision, your mind's not going to take you to 100%. Now, these are the 4 steps that we dive into. We get really clear, we get very specific, and we implement with all of our people in Upgrade. And that is our key. Actually, you know what? I'll say this. It's not just the key. It's what we're going to be implementing because 2026 and on, our biggest focus, and I want to give you context. Traditionally, people who go to training, they just go to a training. Over the years, we've added from training, which we do installation and removal work, we optimize the mind, and we do it in an alter state. So we're able to do a lot. However, it requires people to be consistent on their own. We don't like that. So we added coaching. But even with coaching, not everyone is consistent. Not everyone knows how to practice those skills. So we decided, you know what? The coach is good for doing with or doing for, but how are we going to empower them with skills they can do on their own? Now, some people will say, hey, William, but aren't you afraid that your clients will not need you anymore because they learn how to implement? Because our main objective in 2026 is we're going to do weekly implementation trainings for our clients. And that's a wonderful thing. Weekly implementation led by my team or our student success, the head of student success. I'm not afraid, no, because with great abundance comes even greater abundance. As we give and teach our students to implement, we're going to get referrals. People are going to love us so much. They're like, I'm doing this all the time. I'm practicing. I'm getting so much results. Everyone's going to want to refer. We are going to focus on implementation. So if you're an Upgrade, watch what happens in 2026 as you join us on the implementation calls. We're going to be doing it every week. every month we're going to have 4 implementation calls. So if there's a month with 5 weeks, we're not going to do it on the 5th week. But every month, every Friday afternoon, and it's even good for our international people, right? Join us on our implementation calls if you're in Upgrade. And I know many of you who are listening already are in Upgrade. Now, implementation calls are for Upgrade World and Upgrade Others. So in Upgrade Self, they have their own cohort. So that's great. So regardless of where you are in Upgrade, join us and implement. Make 2026 the year where you create exponential wealth. Now, this is really just part 1 of this episode. We're going to come back in one of the next episodes and we're going to talk about why it's so important to get dialed in on specific beliefs, specific values, specific identity traits that will get you to exponential success. We'll come back on that. Looking forward to it.